What's up, Dolphin fans? My name is Jim Harbaugh. Call me Grease. I say it is not time to panic. This team could easily be 3-2 right now.
I'm Kyle Krabs, host of Locked On Dolphins, and I say you are what your record says you are, and yes, we need to act with a lot of urgency this week against the Chargers.
Hi, I'm Jeff Scanina, and it's bounce back week this week against the Chargers.
Fins up! It's the Dolphin Squad. Everything Miami Dolphins, every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from South Beach. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Sunshine, speed, and squad goals. The Dolphin Squad Show starts now.
What's up, guys? Jim Harbaugh, call me Grease. We have Jeff Scanina, call him Z, and we have Kyle Krabs, call him Busy. He's already done a ton of shows this week. We had group therapy, and of course, he had the Chubb show and Dolphins being sellers at the deadline, and so many things being talked about. Obviously, talk radio burning up this week. This channel's hotter than ever, and unfortunately, whether you win big or you lose big, sometimes losing big is better for the audience, but it's not as fun to do the shows. And Z, Kyle, good to see you guys again. Last time we talked on Sunday, it was absolutely miserable. The Dolphins blow a 17-0 lead against the Carolina Panthers, but to make matters much, much worse, they take the lead late in the game. Defense wins the game for our offense wins the game for them. Defense let Carolina go right down the field and take the lead back. Offense couldn't get it going. There were some questionable decisions in there. And as is usually the case, when we say things like heat check, that heat gets hot. And down the stretch in that game against Carolina, you couldn't point the finger at anybody because everyone was to blame and everyone played a role in that ending, specifically the way that it finished for Miami. And the end result is a 1-4 record. When I say this team easily could be 3-2, you look at the New England game, who just beat Buffalo on the road. Then you look at this Carolina game, and I say, man, it was close in Buffalo too. So I think this is a pretty good football team for 1-4. Z, what do you say?
Yeah, it's just, again, it's like a broken record. Every week we're going to talk about it. Hopefully it ends soon, but our fundamental football is just horrible right now. And until we clean that up, it's going to be the same thing every week in and week out. Again, the fundamentals have got to be cleaned up for us to have a chance.
Kyle, I know you've been talking about this all week. I watched group therapy. Yeah. I watched the deadline show that you did. And, man, your analysis is so on point. There are so many things that you could look at from the end of that game, whether it was the misuse, in our opinion, of the timeout, and then you punt the ball and expect your defense to get a stop that late in the game, or Tua missing an open Jalen Waddle on second down on that last drive, or, busted protections with guys coming in free at Tua. There was nobody. And then, of course, the defense getting gashed. There was nobody who could walk in that locker room and point fingers. But as you've been saying all week, man, it's a team sport, it's a team game. They band together. But this team has got to get back to basics to start winning.
Yeah, and I think it starts up front, and you felt like Carolina played you a certain kind of way, and then you get out of and watch the tape, and I mean they ran big nickel with 3 safeties out on the field with 1 defensive end and 3 defensive tackles. I felt like I was watching a Big 12 football game from 10 years ago as far as structurally how they chose to play up front, and you saw a concentrated effort to kind of get the outside zone rushing game going, because so much of Miami's, I'm sympathetic to a lot of their play action passing is predicated on that kind of run action. So you have to try to have some threat of that in order to capitalize on your play action passing and manipulate the second level the way that you want it to. I think there's just the point of frustration for me. We talked at length in the immediate post game about the run fits and what we did and didn't do up front. And then to have 19 yards in a rushing game in which you were up 17-0 at one point is just, I think there needs to be a recommitment to that. And the fact that we felt like we had that out of the Jets game, and they kind of gave you some heavy fronts that deterred you from running between the tackles, which is where we knew they had their strength. But then to have that lack of answers at that point was the most frustrating thing for me that I think they have to be talking about this week, so that's not replicated, because if it is, then you're going to have a hard time holding any amount of lead for any period of time.
That's Kyle Krabs, Jeff Skanina, Jim Greasehaber. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Like, for instance, Dolphins first half, Panthers second half last week. You could do that. Many other things and props on FanDuel as well. And Kyle, when I think about the ending of that game and I think about one thing that stands out, and when you're talking about heat check, nobody's seat is hotter than Mike McDaniel's, right? Nobody's seat's hotter than his. And we talk about him every week, and the fans in the chat can't stand McDaniel at times. And you know that I get called a homer when I stick up for him, but I've been covering this game. I played it as a kid, been covering it for 30 years, man. I covered the Dolphins in the Marino days, covered him in the Jay Fiedler back to pass, quack, 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 Wannstedt. Oh God. You know what I mean? And Z, I'm bringing back flashbacks for you, but the one thing I always look for when I think about coaching first and foremost, and Z, I can't wait to get your thoughts on this, all those years playing and coaching. Does a team quit? Does a team still have that heart? Does a team still have that fire? And when you blow a 17-0 lead and you're getting gashed like that, the way they did, and the Panthers running all over them, and all of a sudden you give up all those unanswered points, 20 in a row, and then you're down 20-17, you come right back and put points on the board. That's not giving up, man. That's a lot of heart. That's a lot of fight. I'm sorry. If you call me a homer all day long if you want, that team did not quit.
No, not at all. And I don't think they're going to quit. It's too early in the season. You know, I've been in, situations like that as a player and as a coach. And if we're talking late November, December, then yes, I would say there could be some quit happening. But it's still early. I mean, anything could happen. You can go on an 8-game run. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. It's a week-to-week season right now for the Dolphins. And, they just got to keep pounding and pounding away. And I think that, the coaches and the front office has got those people out of the locker room that would be like quitting right now and bashing the head coach behind his back, and bringing other guys down, some older veterans that think they know it all. I've been around those guys, I think they weeded them out, and that was what they tried to do in the offseason. I think they did. So I don't think they have that issue right now in that locker room.
And I was more specifically talking about quitting in game, Z, not week to week, but like within the game when you're down like that. Like the Panthers obviously didn't quit, but then all of a sudden when I say down, I mean the Panthers are doing everything right, you're doing everything wrong. How hard is it not to quit in that game? And how much credit should we be giving them for coming right back and scoring right after all that happened?
Well, that's just, your leaders on the team. They saw that there was a glimmer of hope and a spark happened, and, they rallied around each other and got everybody to play. I don't think there's in-game quit. If there's an in-game quit, you're rolling up 52 points against you, or something like that. And I don't think that's happening. I think that, they are playing hard down in and down out throughout the game, and I don't think there was any quit. And again, you thought when we scored that late, go ahead touchdown.
Z just froze, Kyle. Look at him. He's Han Solo. Empire Strikes Back. The hands aren't up, but
ultimate cliffhanger there, huh?
He just froze. So should we leave Frozen Z? Oh, there he is.
Oh, he's back.
Frozen Z. You were like Han Solo, bro. We were like leaving Frozen Z up there.
You guys went off one by one. I was like, what the heck?
So yeah, we missed the tail end of your point there.
Oh, I just was saying, when we went up those points, I thought for sure the defense was going to come out and rally and get a quick 3 and out. Or 4 and out, because I'm sure Carolina probably would have went for it on 4th down, and we'd have, victory, formationed it out and went home with our second win of the season.
Yeah, and Kyle, you've talked about it a lot on your shows this week, and one thing really stood out to me as I sat back and really thought about that game and just ruminated on it. The Dolphins never ran the ball, right? We know that, and you pointed out on one of your shows, I think it was Group Therapy, that they had a game against the Ravens that they lost by 40-plus points a few years back. They had fewer rushing yards in this game against the Panthers than they did in that game when they lost by 40. So if you're the Panthers, it makes sense, right, that they were able to come back, because what gave the Dolphins the early lead? It was fool's gold, really. It was turnovers and scores off the turnovers, but they never really established anything offensively running the ball, right? How do you take the heart away from a team? Running the football. How do you make a 17-0 lead really feel like a 17-0 lead? By being able to run the football. They were never able to do either one, run it or stop the run. But when you really analyze, as you do in your shows, and you talk about all the gaps, and to me, when I look back, they didn't really take advantage of the one. And this is where I have a problem with Mike and the play calling is they didn't hit the edges in the run game at all. They just tried to run it up the middle and they got stuffed. And then they'd only run to one side, the left side way more than the right. But aside from that, they just completely abandoned it. And when you completely abandon the run game, you take the offensive linemen and put them on skates and pass protection. You're taking half of what the offensive linemen do out of the game, and you're taking the ability for your football team to impose their will on the opponent. And I still don't understand why they didn't try that and why they didn't do more of that.
Yeah, and I think the thing about it too is you've got a struggling left guard who's a rookie, who's in the first month of his playing career, whose strength lies in displacement in the run game. You've got two backups on the right-hand side that you're trying to get settled in. And Larry Borum was a conscious decision that the team made because he gives you better point of attack work in the run game. It was ready-made to order for you guys to try some stuff. And I think the way in which Carolina outperformed my expectations was two players. It was rookie Nick Scorton on the edge, number 11, their edge defender. And then their third safety, who's a starter, but when they go big nickel, they put him down in the D gap to the formational weak stride. It was Trayvon Mooring, who was a really good player who was in free agency this year that was played with the Raiders before that. And they couldn't block him. And whether it was Nick Westbrook-Ikine, whether it was Julian Hill, whether it was Jalen Waddle, whether it was Malik Washington, they couldn't block him. So when your game plan dictates, this is where we think, and we said it last week on the pre-game squad show that we did, we feel like we've got a favorable advantage on the edges. Well, it didn't end up playing out that way because of structurally, they did some unique things to kind of build themselves some extra leverage. You can get a really physical defensive back that your tight ends and big wide receivers couldn't block. I just would have hoped to have seen a pivot, right? Like, okay, you know, and I thought their best blocked run that they had was when they were out of pistol and they ran GY counter with the guard and the tight end wrapping around. And they got, you know, if you didn't have a defensive tackle slip off the right tackle on that play off the right-hand side, you probably could have got 6-7 yards off it, at least push the pile a little bit. They ran zone concepts, I think, 80% of the times in this game. And I know that's the DNA of the offense at its core. But if a team can just throw a look at you that maybe was unscouted beforehand, that's where Mike's reputation as a run game coordinator and how smart I know he is, you're looking, instead of just saying, well, I guess we're doing something else today. We're going to throw the ball 40 times. Probe it a little bit. Try some of this stuff. And I felt like that was the part of it for me that I wish they would have worked on a little bit more throughout the course of that 60 minutes.
And when you're talking about heat check, Z, that's one of the first things that people point out about Mike is those play calls in those moments, or the misuse of the timeouts, which we've seen several times, challenges, which didn't show up really in this game, but bad penalties at terrible times. They were really good in the first half with the penalties. Second half, 8 penalties, only 1 in the first half. They fell apart in the second half, and they started doing things that you wouldn't normally see on an NFL field, like illegal formations on 2 kicks, for example. So I'm not excusing Mike for anything, and I know his seat's really hot. When you're losing in this league, it's hot no matter what. But the way that he handled the end of the game, that to me, and Kyle, you got comments on this, no one in the media asking about it after the game, and I didn't see the press conference, it's just a comment in one of your shows, but I think, because we were on live, but I think that when you're talking about things like heat check, Z, it's so glaringly obvious at the end of a game like that to punt the ball away, keep all your timeouts, not take any on offense, and rely on a defense that hadn't stopped anything all day to all of a sudden stop them with a minute left in the game, and then all of a sudden you have no time left in that last-ditch effort. So that really was a lot of it, I think, to me, and the heat that Mike's getting is mostly coming from there this past week.
Yeah, I mean, you could have went either way on that, right? You go for 4th down and you don't get it. Now what? I mean, they could run it up again. He gambled on it. I mean, if I was a head coach, I might have done the same thing. Just because you hope that this is the time your defense is going to step up and get a stop and put you in better position, you know, for a punt return, getting good position, you know, to score. Because if you don't do it that way and they score, now you're really down and you have no chance to win the game. So I think that was the only thought in his mind was to win the game was to punt that ball away on 4th down. And I get it. it didn't work out.
No, it didn't. It definitely didn't. And Kyle, I want to pick up on the other side. I don't know if you guys saw what Odell Beckham Jr. said about the Dolphins last year and called last year poison. And he was the shiny object to Mike McDaniel, the guy he really wanted. And supposedly OBJ said, I'm not healthy enough to play. And they said, we want you on the team anyway. And so it speaks to the culture. So we'll speak on that on the other side. It's Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jim Greasehaber, call me Grease. Going to keep on rolling with OBJ's comments. Much, much more. Is it time to panic as you get ready for the LA Chargers? That was a funny thing too. Inside joke. We'll talk about that on the other side. It's Grease, it's Z, it's Kyle. It is your Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Step aside while Kyle tells you a little bit about one of our awesome sponsors at FanDuel.
NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss right now. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5. If it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love FanDuel because it gives you ways to play no matter how you like to play, whether that's spreads, game totals, player props, parlays, live lines during the game. You name it, they have it. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something on the line for yourself. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started.
All right, getting started with FanDuel. Good idea. They always have great specials in all kinds of ways to bet. And if you're betting on the Dolphins, should you be? Time to panic, I guess. I'm saying no. 1-4 is always, your heartbeat speeds up for sure when you're 1-4 and your outlook changes. But Kyle, you made a great point on your show, and I want to get to what OBJ said in a minute. But you made a great point on one of your shows where you said, hey, you start thinking about trading away assets where you could bring back some of the draft picks that they've lost, and hopefully they can start hitting on them. But I mean, a whole nother topic of conversation I could go off on in a moment would be, do you trust Chris Greer with those draft picks? Because his track record has kind of shown that maybe you can't. So I wonder if that would play into it. But I think more so, everybody's job's on the line. And when your job's on the line, Mike McDaniel's on the line, Tua's on the line, everybody's job's on the line. Nobody's going to want to go that direction and start the fire sale. So it's kind of a little catch-22 there.
Yeah, it's I don't think we'll get to a point where they will be selling or looking to sell at the trade deadline unless Stephen Ross makes a change before the trade deadline comes in about a month. Now, I think there's some conversations to be had about the long-term health of the roster and the outlook of whatever the next chapter looks like. And I think it's totally appropriate at this stage to talk about Chris Greer and his hand in it and his hand in the roster construction. And because he's the guy who's been here the longest, right? Like Chris Greer was here. They hired a coach, didn't work out. They drafted a quarterback. They hired the next coach with an intent on trying to maximize that quarterback. But you go up the ladder, and the common thread throughout this entire build since 2019 has been Chris. And whether that's draft picks or whether that's signing Odell Beckham when he's not ready to sign, but you want to get him on the roster, right? And then he's has a late knee procedure and he's not ready for the start of the season. And then he misses the first 4 games of the year. And then he's out there and he's not in sync with the offense. And he's out there moping around while his teammates catch touchdowns. Give me a break about those comments, but I know we're going to get there in a minute. I think the challenging thing for me is I would have transitioned from Chris last year, regardless of what the decision was with Mike McDaniel if I was Stephen Ross, because you wanted a different feel and flavor and mentality to what your infrastructure was as a roster. And they tried to do that. Now, we haven't seen success with consistency from your young rookies yet, but those guys are thrust into prominent playing roles because you didn't have anybody else on the roster, right? So I think there's a conversation to be had about who's viable players to potentially move, who makes sense to move from a money standpoint, who makes sense to move from a draft standpoint, who makes sense to really resist any tempting offers that you get because they're a part of what the next iteration of the team should look like with those players as your centerpieces. There's a lot of layers to that conversation, and I just don't see them really going all into those conversations if everybody's still lingering around at the end of October when you're hosting the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday Night Football, because you know you're up against it and you got to continue to win, and moving players away probably isn't going to be a part of that solution.
No, and Kyle, I want to talk to you real quick about Mike McDaniel with Tua, because we know Chris Greer brought Tua here before Mike, and they paid him, though, when Mike was here. So he had to have signed off on it, right, when they gave him all that money. When you give a quarterback that much money and you build around him and you bring in Tyreek Hill and you bring in Jalen Waddle, who, by the way, played like a G. He was the best player on the team in that game against Carolina, I thought. Jalen and Darren Waller, they stopped throwing to him in the second half. And Achane in the passing game made a great catch in the end zone. But you bring in all those weapons, and you had Mostert, and you had Achane, and you had Cheetah, and you had Waddle, and you gave Tua all that money, and you surrounded him with all those Ferraris, all those Lamborghinis, and you went all in on that offense, and you really missed on that. It could not have gone any worse than what they thought it would have gone, or how they thought it would have gone. And when I look back, I remember thinking, even heading into last season, I was one of those guys thinking the Dolphins could make a huge run. Tua gets hurt, and then you blame it on Tua. I think it just kind of masked Tua's injury last year, just sort of masked all these things that we're seeing right now. Hindsight being 2020 always, though, how much do you put on Mike with that? Or do you say, hey, we're going to wait till after the season, we're going to get rid of our GM, we're going to give Mike a fresh start with someone he can work with and let him have more of an imprint on this, instead of blaming him for bad choices made by the GM, a lot of which were made before he was here?
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this. I think one of our other ones, I can't remember if it was after Carolina or the one midweek last week, but it gets really hard to untangle that ball of yarn, right? And I do think there's a larger percentage of blame to be had in this for Chris Greer than Mike McDaniel, because Chris is the guy that hired Mike. And Mike was brought here primarily with the intent of being the head coach of the football team, but fixing Tua Tagovailoa, who Brian Flores did his absolute damnedest to try to break. And I think he did that. And now it kind of feels like you listen to some NFL insiders the last couple of weeks after a couple of the losses, whether it's Tom Pelissero with NFL Network, or just today it was Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, and James Palmer from who was formerly with NFL Network was another one who said this. They have all said some variation of the same observation when talking about Mike McDaniel's hot seat the last 3 weeks, that Mike has to work with some limitations, including those around the kinds of subjecting the quarterback you can to risk because of the durability issues and the head injuries. And I get that, but the moment Mike goes up to Stephen Ross's office and helps to advocate to get the contract extension done, for me, I think that's where those two kind of get tied in together, where I think they're at the hip in that regard. So if I were to put an assignment of blame, I'm looking further up the chart, because the guy who was at the very beginning of this, whose name is on the bottom line of every decision that you ultimately make, he's responsible for those people being here and with their strengths and weaknesses. So how much you want to say, hey, we're going to sustain Tua and Mike, or we're going to say sustain Mike, but we'll move on from Tua, or draft somebody else and Tua will be here as a bridge player with a new GM. Like, it just feels messy in that regard, in my opinion. So that's where, like, these guys all either need to collectively figure it out or they don't at this stage. And that's kind of where I'm at with it, just because I've seen too many half resets where people are on different timelines with different interests, and you really have a hard time getting everybody aligned and staying aligned when streaks and stretches of a season like what we have right now in Miami start to pop up.
Yeah, and Z, after Jimmy Johnson, you have 26 years with Don Shula, 4 years with Jimmy. And Jimmy's obviously a Hall of Fame coach, so I'll put Jimmy. I won't put him in the category of Shula with the Dolphins, but I'll put him in the category of great head coaches. But since then, to me, it's been a comedy of errors. No one's hired the right coach for the Dolphins ever since then. Now, I like Mike McDaniel, and I like what they did surrounding him with all the offensive talent. It blew up on him because of Tua's durability and some other things like that. Tyreek Hill getting hurt, also being a malcontent for most of the time that he was here. But you talk about Dave Wannstedt. That was a handoff from Jimmy. Obviously, Jimmy coming here and making it, hey, I'm going to hand it off to my guy, Wayne, and okay, but after that, you go Jim Bates. Saban obviously screwed this franchise 100 ways from Sunday. He wasn't a very good NFL coach anyway, but then you go Cam Cameron, Tony Sperano, Todd Bowles, Joe Philbin, Dan Campbell, Adam Gase, and look at Dan Campbell now, Brian Flores, and then McDaniel. But the one guy they had, they didn't keep. They let him go, Dan Campbell. And every other hire has been like, who's that guy? Even now you look back and you go, who's that guy? And it may not be fair for me to say that, but nowhere in there is there a star head coach. So I'm going to ask you point blank, why would you not bring in a guy like John Gruden? NFL be damned. Why would you not want to bring in a guy like John Gruden? He's the guy I look at and I say, if there's anyone who could do anything with this team and turn it around, the track record's there, it'd be Chucky.
Well, yeah, I mean, you say that because he's out there and he's got a great track record. All right. But how was it going in Vegas now, right? I mean,
they loved him there. They loved him.
I know they loved him there, but it was a rocky start. So you're going to have the same conversations that we're having now.
But anyone's going to have a rocky start here, right?
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, what about Belichick? Why don't you bring Belichick in?
He can't even coach the Tar Heels.
Yeah. Let Saban take another run at it. I mean, there's a lot of names out there, But again, does the owner really want to bring somebody like that in? That's the question.
Should I not be falling in love with the names? What is it?
You can fall in love all you want, but at the end of the day, a lot of owners like the flashy name. So yes, Gruden's name's going to be in there. Whoever the top coordinator out there on offensive defense will be thrown in there if they move on from Mike. Again, and this roster is a year away to 2 years. It ain't like some guy's going to come in and it's going to be like the Commanders and have a quick turnover. Now I don't know what the cap room is and here and all that but. The Commanders had a huge amount of money in cap room to go out and get players to fill in the gaps. And they had a lot of players, for Dan to come in there and have the success they had last year. And they got a quarterback who was able to play as a rookie right away and did a lot of good things. So do we have that here? That's the question.
I wonder about that. And it's a lot of money to move on from Tua, Kyle. Thank God the Tyreek Hill contract was structured the way it was. Thank God, because they'd be dead if it weren't. They'd have no chance to cut Tua, right? So the question everybody's going to be asking is, should they cut Tua? And it's almost unfair for us to be going down this road completely 5 games into the season when you have a game this week. Who should be the head coach? Who should be the next quarterback? Should they cut the quarterback they have now? But it obviously is a topic of conversation because of their record and the way things have gone. But when I think about the salary cap, Z just brought up a good point. They would take a huge hit if they cut Tua. They're not going to take a massive hit on Tyreek Hill, although the hit they're taking on Tyreek is this year.
Well, so they will take a $28 million dead cap charge next year for moving on from Tyreek. But that's versus a $52 million cap hit. So you're still saving $24 million in cap space by moving on from him, right? Here's where I'm at with the Tua thing. He has a guaranteed salary of $53 million next year in cash. That's not cap charge. That's cash that he's owed. It's fully guaranteed. I don't think this is a player that with that kind of salary commitment, regardless of how the rest of the season plays out, and I think relatively speaking, he's been better than not the last 2 weeks in particular. I felt like he's kind of settled in a little bit. Now there's still some frustrating misses, but in my pecking order of why you lost to Carolina, Tua is bottom of the list, right? Mm-hmm. And he hit that big 46-yard throw. People will point to the second down miss that he had, and I get it. It's a frustrating miss. It's a money throw for you. But he did hit the 46-yarder down the field for the go-ahead touchdown in the final 5 minutes. So I think everybody has a right to be mad, but let's be mad at the right things at the right times for the right reasons, right? I don't think there's going to be a robust trade market for Tua, no matter how the season plays out, even if he plays well at that dollar amount because of the head injury risk that's been well established. So you can cut Tua and pay him $53 million, or you can keep Tua and pay him $53 million. Even if you're bringing in a different quarterback this offseason, for that amount of money, you'd almost rather just have him be a bridge player for you next year, whether that means he starts the season, he starts the whole season, he does the Jimmy Garoppolo thing and ends up being the backup where they had that with Trey Lance, and then they go to Brock Purdy in 2023. Like, I have a really hard time justifying pay him to go away, right? So I think that's where, for me, like, it's fair game to have conversations, because if they do make wholesale changes in the football operation, part of the allure of bringing people into the operation is going to be you're going to have your right and your opportunity to choose who you want to be your quarterback. So I think that puts everything on the table, but I would almost rather, I have the numbers, and I know we got to get the break, Grease, but I want to make sure I get the numbers right here on this. I have looked at this. The Dolphins, theoretically, they did not touch Tua's contract last offseason. And so they didn't choose to restructure any of his money. They could restructure him for 2026 because he's getting the money either way. And you could create $30 million in cap space for 2026. And then if you drafted or added another quarterback, and that was going to be your long-term answer, you could post June 1st Tua for 2027, and it's $26.4 million in dead cap space in 2027, which is less than what your dead cap is going to be for Tyreek Hill this offseason when you move on from him. And then there's another cap charge in 2028. Like, if you want to have a competitive roster, but hang on to Tua as a bridge player and potentially have it be on the table depending on who's available to bring somebody else into the picture for 2026 if you make a coaching change or a GM change and all that kind of stuff. That, to me, I think is the most sensible pathway for you to do it and say, hey, like, Tua, you're going to get a chance to start this year. We have somebody else that's going to be the future for us. Play it out, see how it goes.
Yeah, and obviously finding Brock Purdy, needle in a haystack, helped the Niners, and we don't know
their jobs.
Yeah, we don't know if Quinn Ewers can be that guy or not. We don't know. I mean, competition makes the world go around. They bring in Zach, and you have Ewers there, so we'll see. But anyway, we have break to get to. Jim Grieshaber, Jeff Skanina, Kyle Krabs is your Dolphin Squad show. We're gonna turn the corner. We're gonna leave the therapy session, and we're gonna just put the tissues away, and we're gonna turn the corner to the LA Chargers, a team that looked like they were headed toward an amazing season a couple of weeks ago. Not so much right now. Injuries in the NFL can derail anything in a hurry. Key matchups coming up, road to victory coming up. This is your Dolphin Squad show on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Be right back after a word from Peloton.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
All right, there you have it, guys. Dolphin Squad show. Z, Kyle, I'm Grease, and thank you for being here. Thank you for making us your first watch or listen every day. Kyle's got the channel built. You guys know to come back for all his content day by day. And Z, of course, the former Miami Dolphin, played on that defensive line with Jason Taylor, Zach Thomas at middle linebacker, some of the best defenses the Dolphins ever had, for that matter. They just didn't have any offense back then. And they tried to build with the offense this way with Mike McDaniel, full defensive rebuild. When Wannstedt was here, you go to the personality of your coach. And we're done crying, so to speak, after last week's game. And I say this team could easily be 3-2 right now. You look at the Pats game, you look at the Panthers game, and then even the Bills game on the road. They played pretty well against the Bills team that lost at home to New England last week. So the Patriots fans are all screaming, we're back, we're back. But I think, Z, it really just speaks to the parity in this league, man. You think you're on top. You think your team's going to be great. Look at the Ravens. Quote the Raven, nevermore. And the Chiefs losing at Jacksonville. So it's wide open in this league right now. And with the 17-game season, there's no way it's too early to panic. I don't know if this team can turn it around and make the playoffs, but, you know, I almost wonder if it would be worse to do what they did last year than it would be to just have a 2 or 3 win season. And I know you're never, as a player and a coach, going to say, hey, I'll take the 2 or 3 win season, but it kind of is, it's worth analyzing here because you get a better draft pick, you know, things like that. I know no one's going to quit, but what I'm saying is as a fan, put your fan hat on. Is it almost better to have a terrible season than just another mid-season where they say turn it on and save people's jobs by winning 3-4 games in a row?
Well, yes. Win your 3, 4, 5 games, 6 games in a row and save everybody's job. That's, as a player, that's how you think.
Right.
You don't want to have a 2-win, 3-win season. That's miserable. It's miserable watching TV. It's miserable going to the store. It's miserable doing anything. Talking to family. It's just miserable, right? As a fan, like, you want to put my fan hat on, which I kind of refuse to do, but I will do this for you, Grease. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Z. There we go.
As a fan, yes, you want a tank. You
Yeah.
want the first pick. You want to have a high draft pick. That's, that's what every talk radio, every show like this is going to be talking about. Are they going to tank it so we get that draft pick? We want that draft pick. We want that draft pick. But again, again, we've played 5 games. We've got 12 more to go. To even have that talk in your, that thought as a player or coach is going to make it miserable. So I am not about tanking. So now I'm taking my fan hat off. We're going to string something together eventually here. We're going to get it going, and it's going to be exciting, and we're going to, finish the year off strong.
All right, Kyle, before all these Dolphins just start swimming in the Everglades with chickens taped to themselves, with this team right now, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to have an unpopular opinion here. I think it's who you pick, not where you pick. I see plenty of examples of players get drafted at 10. Where'd Micah Parsons get drafted? Where'd Justin Jefferson get drafted? Right. And I know there's different calibers of draft classes. Where'd Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen get drafted? They didn't get drafted the first overall pick. Where'd Lamar Jackson get drafted? Right. It's about your football operation, identifying the proper people and the proper players with the proper tools to succeed in your environment that you are creating. And I think those are the big picture conversations that are more challenging to me. It's easy to take the layup and say, oh, yeah, well, you get the first overall pick. You can get anybody you want. You're probably going to get a really good player. I would not be mad at all if the Dolphins end up stumbling into Ruben Bain at the University of Miami. That guy's an absolute dog. He's a monster.
Yeah.
And with Jalen Phillips in a contract year, Bradley Chubb probably going to be a cap casualty after this year. Chop Robinson, we haven't seen that same version of him from the back half of last year just yet. Just take the best player, right? So whenever you're in a position and a obvious blue chip player, whether he's a premium position player or not, like, I'm always going to advocate for taking those blue chip talents when they're available to you, and you have more frequent opportunities to do that at the top of the draft. So if that's how it plays out, cool. But I don't think winning a few games or picking at 12 is going to preclude you from making good decisions if you know what you're looking for and you know what you're doing. And in the same way that, the concern is, if they save their jobs, Dolphins fans maybe don't want the team to win too many games because they want change, fundamental change within your organization. This team in 2021 saw the Dolphins reel off 8 wins in 9 games, got to the end of the season, and still made the decision to fire Brian Flores because they knew it was untenable long-term. So I don't think those things have to be mutually exclusive, where as long as you're willing to have the honest conversations and look at the big picture, whether that's scouting draft prospects or that's what fundamental changes you need to make in your org. I think I, as a fan, I don't want to live through 1-15 again. I'll understand the necessity of it if it happens and what that means for everybody, but I'm very much a not who you pick, it's where you pick it. I think that's especially relevant in a town and community like Miami, where there's a lot of other stuff, right? Like, these young kids come in, they get money now. There's lots of things to do in South Florida. You don't have that in Buffalo or Green Bay or Detroit. Like, it's a different kind of ball game down here. And I think those are the kinds of things that, as this season plays itself out, when it becomes apparent don't need to be made, like, I hope we focus some on that, because I think that's stuff that's really important for this organization to have the right answers to.
Yeah, and I want to point out, Z, too, that the where this team is losing, and Kyle said this, Tua was at the bottom of the pecking order in terms of the blame, and I think Mike McDaniel, the end of the game, I'm not going to let him off on that one. But aside from that, I thought he called a really good game, especially in the first half, just abandoned the run for some reason, and they know a lot more than we do, right? They're watching the film. They have the coaches in real time assessing these things, and for whatever reason, they went away from it. But this team's losing in the trenches, man. They had a good defense last year. They revamped it. They wanted to get younger. and they went with a lot of youth up front. And people in the chat are making real good points right now about guys like Patrick Paul, who was bad last year, playing really well this year, right? And it takes time to be an NFL player. You don't have that time when you're spending that kind of money, and you have guys like Tua and Tyreek Hill's getting up there in years. But there's a lot to be said for restocking the cupboard with draft picks and using them to fill in on those offensive and defensive lines. Look, everybody's killing Jerry Jones for the Micah Parsons trade. Nobody knows who they're going to draft with those picks. What if they draft another Micah Parsons? What if they end up with half the haul they got in the Herschel Walker trade, which is what Jerry's trying to do and create his legacy, I think, right now. But the point is restocking the cupboard. The number one thing that this team did in going all in on the skill positions, they gave up so many draft picks, the tampering things. They just need to restock that cupboard. And that's, I think, Z, you tell me if I'm wrong, that's where you really see that is on the line of scrimmage.
Oh, without a doubt. That's how you win and lose games is your offense and defensive line. I mean, that's how usually most teams are built. Most successful teams, if you look at them, they have dudes up front on both sides of the ball. Look at the Eagles. Prime example, right? Now they're stuttering a little bit right now, but their offensive line is one of the best in the league. Their defensive line, year in and year out, they've always draft first or second round guy at the D line, always. And that's what you have to do. I mean, I've been on teams as a player and as a coach and gone through drafts and drafted nobody on either side of the line. Now you know you're in trouble. You know, as a coach and a player, you're just sitting there going, are you kidding me? Because you can't just go find those dudes out there. It's hard to find D linemen out there, just out there to, you know, that are going to come in and give you all pro bowl, you know, caliber type players. You just don't find them. You get lucky once in a while, yes, but it's hard to find them. You have to draft them, especially pass rushers on the defensive line, or you're going to be paying an arm and a leg just to get them in, or within money or with draft picks just to get them. And one thing to say, like go with Kyle talking about, you know, a mid-round, first-round pick, you kind of want that. Why? Because that's usually we get your trades. And since we don't have a lot of draft picks, that's great trade bait to drop down in the first round, get a second or a third that we need, you know what I'm saying, to fill our cupboards with these players that we're talking about, corners, D linemen, you know, O linemen, running back, whatever it is, you know, to fill in those spots next year. So, yeah, you really don't want to tank because those high picks, nobody really trades for them because it's too costly. And, you know, the teams that are trading for them are in the same problem as you, usually.
Yeah, and what we thought was going to be a blitz to get to Arch Manning doesn't look like that anymore, right, after the way his season has started. But Kyle, 28th in yards per game, 30th in rushing yards per game on offense, 29th in yards allowed per game on defense, 27th in points allowed per game. As you head into this Chargers game, right, and you're trying to patch this thing together, we talked about the heart, the guts, the fight in this team and how they could be 3-2 if they'd have been able to pull off that 3-2. And I'm talking about the Patriots game where they give up the kickoff return right after they score on the punt return. And I'm talking about this Carolina game where they're up 17-0. Then they retake the lead at 24-20, couldn't get the stop, also got the ball back, couldn't score, right? So now you have a Chargers team coming in. And you made a great point. I think, Kyle, you made it on Sunday. The biggest advantage the Dolphins have in this game, now the Chargers have a lot of injuries up front, but the biggest advantage they have is the turnaround for LA with the time zones, right? So that's a 10 o'clock game for the Chargers. That's a 10 o'clock game for them. So you think about it from that standpoint. In South Florida, 10 o'clock game for them. You might be able to catch them early, and usually you can with a West Coast team. I almost did it. LA Chargers. I almost did it. The boomer almost came out in me. But total yards per game, they're 12th. Points per game, they're 25th. They pretty much score 19.5 points a game, and they give up 19.5 points a game. But their defense is ranked near the top of the league in yards allowed. So they're pretty tough up front. Can't imagine the Dolphins are going to be able to run the ball much against them either. And San Diego, obviously.
There it is.
There it is again. I have it in my head. Jim Harbaugh is one of the toughest coaches in the league. You know he's going to come out and try to pound that football.
Yeah, and they're going to need to because the same things that we just got done talking about how Miami didn't have success against Carolina doing, where they got some young players up front. They got some new starters up front. Cole Strange has been in the system for 4 weeks now. He's a starting right guard. This will be his third game because James Daniels won't be back this week. Austin Jackson's on IR. It's Larry Borum. He's starting his fourth game of the season for you. And then you have rookie Jonas Sinai, who's starting his sixth game. That group you'd like to see run the football, play less time under tension, take the pressure and stress off of them, let them play forward. The Chargers are on at least both starting tackles, and I believe the swing tackle is down for them too. Like they're on like a fourth offensive tackle is going to be starting for them this week. And that's what you do look at for the Chargers. They ran for over 150 yards in each of the last 2 weeks, and that includes against the Giants and against Dan Quinn and Washington, which is a very good defensive outfit for them too. So, but they've turned the ball over 4 times. They've scored 18 and 10 points, so they're averaging 14 points a game the last 2 weeks while having success running the ball because of some mistakes, and they can't really pass protect at the level that they need to. It's been under 190 passing yards the last 2 weeks after Herbert came out red hot, had that big statement win against the Chargers in week 1. So, that's the matchup for me. That what are you going to do from a front perspective to potentially give you some better answers? I was surprised how much we saw the ends really playing wide against Carolina. And it felt like there's a lot of space in the C gaps, a lot of double teams and combination blocks on the interior that really tested the young guys that we had. Do you change some of your front? Do you play a little bit more base defense with your odd front looks and kind of do what Carolina did to you? I know we've had some frustrations with the edge guys playing in shallow zones, but I'd almost rather have that and have the extra hat on the line of scrimmage to kind of give you a little bit more stability, because Harbaugh is probably going to want to run the football in this game.
Yeah, and penalties have killed LA this season so far, and they played a couple of tough teams. And I know it's funny you say the Giants are a tough team, but they are a tough team. They're a physical team. I love Cam Scatabo in there and what he's doing. He's infectious. He's rubbing off on the whole team with that mindset and that attitude of his. And then obviously the Commanders, one of the toughest teams in the league, and the Chargers completely, I got it in my head now, the Chargers completely shot themselves in the foot with penalties in that game. We have one more segment to go. We're going to look at the road to victory for the Miami Dolphins and what I think, and I don't know what the guys think, I think this is a winnable game for them, and we will do it right after this quick word on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is Dolphin Squad Show. There we go. All right, guys. And when you look at the LA Chargers and the penalties have been we're seeing, Z, I want to talk to you about this. You're a player and a coach, 27 years, right? Total. And I look at you were a player coach when you were one of those guys who was like having another coach on the field when you played in the middle of that defensive line. But why are we seeing so many penalties, and why are we seeing so many bad penalties? You would never have seen illegal formations on kicks in week 5 in the past. Am I just being an old head, or is something really wrong here with this league right now?
No, you got on the kicks, you're getting, formation things. You're still getting it on the offense with the tackle too deep. I heard a few times on, a couple games, tackle too deep. Wide receivers are not up on the line because now the refs are not, you used to be able to point out there and hey, am I good? And they give you the thumbs up, but the refs are not doing that anymore. And these guys are not, locking in all the way and take, taking enough in their craft to line up correctly. I mean, that's pre-snap penalties are inexcusable, especially at this level. I get it in little league and high school. Okay. But even in college, there's no room for that at all. So these guys got to focus better. It's got to be locked in better, because a crucial part of it, especially on those kicks late in the game, that hurts us, pushes us back 10 more yards. When we're struggling already offensively to move the ball. We can't have that. It's inexcusable. And who knows, because of the new kickoff rule and the kickoff return rules, I guess some guys haven't really locked into it yet, because it is new. But again, 4 or 5 weeks into it, shouldn't be an issue anymore.
And Kyle, coming in this week, Storm Duck still not ready to practice. That secondary still decimated. And I don't care what you do. If you have all those injuries back there, you're going to struggle. And then you can't stop the run on top of it. So coming in against Herbert, who's, I'd say, the second best quarterback they've faced this year, right? Wouldn't you say so? Daniel Jones looked great. Drake May looked great. But Herbert, maybe just a couple notches below Josh Allen and a couple notches above those other guys. It looks like he could have a field day against this secondary, at least coming into this game. But with the ability to run the football that they have on that team and their mindset offensively, this looks like it could get real ugly real quick for Miami. How do you approach this game if you're Weaver and that defense against that dual threat in LA?
It's the big challenge that I think Anthony has to decide. In Carolina made a business decision against Miami of we're going to play lighter box counts with a big nickel so we could still have some physicality, and we're going to dare Miami to kind of attack the three defensive tackles and that four-man front with three defensive tackles in it. And Miami chose to go about their business trying to score points and move the balls in different ways. I think that's what Anthony has to do in this game, because if you try to load up front, then you're down some starters, you're down both your top running backs if you're the Chargers coming into the game, right? Najee Harris and with an Achilles out for the year, and they just put Omarion Hampton, their first-round draft pick, on injured reserve.
That's
that
brutal.
With both offensive tackles down, their best run-blocking tight end is hurt. Not sure if he's going to go either at this stage, so they got some questions. Do you say, hey, we've been so frustrating up front, I want the extra hat on the line of scrimmage, but then I have to try to match Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston as a down-the-field guy and Keenan Allen, who's an excellent route runner, with less bodies on the back end? Or do I want to say I will play like I did against Carolina, the lighter box counts? I think those guys will figure out how to get off the blocks this week, or at least do so at a better rate than what we did against Carolina, and get the extra hat and coverage. Like, that's where this whole conversation starts for them, is they have to decide, do we want to be a 5-man, 3-4 defense, play more base this week because of how bad we've been against the run? Or alternatively, do we need to try to stay in nickel? And I would assume it's going to be big nickel at this point, because Cornell Armstrong, who is the team's 4th nickel option this season, just went on IR. He went on IR today. So they signed Kendall Sheffield, who was with the team throughout training camp, to the practice squad. They activated another safety in Adrian Colbert, who's been with the team for the last 2 years, flashed in the preseason. He's up on the active roster now. So I assume it's Minkah Fitzpatrick, probably going to live in the nickel, because I think he's the player that can give you the best impact there. And then Ashton Davis, and whether it's Dante Trader or Yafitu Melifonwu, like, you have to pick and choose your battles here. And I think that's the unenviable task that Anthony Weaver has this week.
Yeah, and defensively, offensively, all kinds of injuries for Miami to overcome. But the corners that were playing and the DBs that did play last week, they got to get better in a hurry. I mean, Jack Jones and Rasul, those guys were bad in that Carolina game. There was just so many busts in coverage, bad penalties, and it's one of those things that's really ugly. And then you're facing a guy like Herbert, who extends plays like Allen. And that's the thing to me, being able to extend those plays, Z. And if Tyrell Dodson, and I don't know, do we have an update on him, Kyle? He's in the protocol still, right? We're not sure on him, right?
Yeah, I don't, it doesn't sound promising, but I don't think there's anything official in that regard just yet.
All right, so stay tuned and keep watching Kyle for that. But Z, how do you go into that room and put the head down and get to work and turn things around, knowing you got a guy like Herbert coming in? It's gut check, it's pride check, it's all those things, but how are they going to be able to clean up all those things with a guy like him coming in? You know, with all those injuries to their running backs and in the run game, you're going to see a lot more of Herbert throwing the ball.
Yeah, but I still think that they're going to the Chargers come in and try to run the ball. They're going to look at that jet tape, those first couple drives, and saw how they were just taking it down the field. Because I know their coordinator, Greg Roman, he likes to run the ball first, and so does Harbaugh. So I think they're going to come in and try to set that run game. And we're just going to have to play great technique up front with the front seven, get off blocks and make plays to shut that down, and then worry about the quarterback. Because, he, like you said, he is a dangerous dude back there. So we're just going to have to, rush with great rush lanes, half a man rush it, be able to get off blocks in our rush to get this guy, because he's going to pull the ball down and try to run it, because that's what he does when he doesn't see anything open.
Yeah, he does, and he's great at that, extending plays, gaining positive yardage, picking up first downs with his feet. He's in that zone throwing the ball, and it certainly hasn't been his fault they've lost. They've fallen apart with penalties, the Chargers have, and that's one thing with the injuries, and penalties have sort of gotten them, Kyle. But when you hear Z talk like that and you think the Chargers are just come out, stuff it down their throats, the alternative needs to happen, right? You said it before the Jets game, run the tar out of the football. The best way to stop any offense is to keep them off the dang field.
Yeah, I think that's where you look at a lot of the metrics for the Dolphins and their offense this year. Since week 2, they're actually top 12 in offensive EPA per play. It's just they are not possessing the ball enough because they're not consistently running the ball. And then therefore the defense is out there and the offensive drives are shorter. So they're not getting the total yardage that they need. And you're not playing complementary football in that regard. So it never feels as bad as it's never actually as bad as it feels, but it feels pretty bad when you run for 19 yards in a game. So I see pathways for them to be better in that regard. I just think there needs to be a conscious decision, especially because there's no Tyreek Hill temptation anymore, right? Like, you just kind of have to make the decision on, hey, we have the ability and we have to stick with it for 60 minutes and trust that the explosiveness that our offense has is going to yield enough plays that even if we get off schedule a few times with some runs, that's not going to be the deterrent that gets us away from it completely.
Yeah, no doubt. And when you look at the passing game for Miami and the dinks and dunks, Z, I know Tua has trouble throwing the deep ball, even the one that he hit to Waddle. And by the way, Waddle was open all game against Carolina. I mean, he had separation all game long. And I'm looking for more of that against the Chargers. And I think we'll see that. The dink in, the dunk in, the super long drives, over 10 plays, keeping the ball, that can be impressive. But I still want to see this team take more shots, man. I think you come out very early in this game, you take a big shot, you run a flea flicker, you do something to let them know that everything's in play, and you're going to take chances down the field, because the longer you go without doing that, look, you caught Carolina last week because they kept creeping up because you were dinking and dunking the whole game, and then you hit them deep. Why not take a deep shot early and keep them more honest and have more of a commitment to the running game I want to see this week?
Oh, me too. I mean, Mikey's got to come out and just run the ball. I mean, even if he gets stuffed, you got to,
no deep shot early.
That's going to set it up, though, the deep shot. I don't see Mike coming out right away and just airing it out. I hope not. Like I said, I hope he runs the ball. You got to shrink this game, into our favor so you can take those shots. Because if you just start lighting them up, and you're not getting success, it gives, the Chargers more time on the clock. The way our defense is playing, you got to shrink the game. That's the number one thing I see.
Shrinking the game. And I was saying, keep them honest, Kyle, not come out and just sling it all over the yard, but take a shot early, let them know in the back of their minds that it's always there. Like I said, you caught Carolina, to Z's point. That's how they caught Carolina last week, and they took the lead late doing it. So what are your thoughts offensively going in as an approach for Miami to this game?
Yeah, I would like to see continued increase in role. Maybe not, I'm not saying target Darren Waller 10 times, but I think the more Darren Waller's able to stay on the field, you could really lean into some stuff that you haven't done a lot of, which is 12 and 22 personnel, which, to Jeff's point, those are naturally going to facilitate some heavier defensive sets and maybe an extra hat down in the box. And then you can come out and you can take the kind of shot that you take because Jalen Waddle's able to get behind a DB and take a deep shot play, because that touchdown came out of 22 personnel. The Dolphins, when they put two backs on the field and they put two tight ends on the field, they're the number one team in the NFL as far as the success rate above expectation on those plays. You want to lean into that, right? You don't have temptation of Tyreek Hill. You don't have temptation to air the ball out 40 times. They had 22 plays with three wide receivers on the field against Carolina and averaged less than 1.75 yards per play, right? So you've got this brand new weapon in Darren Waller. You're trying to figure out how to assimilate, even if he's just out there, right? I think that's where personnel-wise you can do some different things to stay true to what you believe your pillars of your identity are offensively, and that can get you to manipulate personnel, box count, and spacing on the back end to be able to take some aggressive shots and try to get some chunk plays in the passing game.
All right, well, moment of truth, guys. What are we going to do for predictions here? What are you guys thinking? How's it going to go down this week? And can the Dolphins pull out a victory? Z, I'll start with you.
Well, I think we do have a great chance to get a victory this week. I'm going to bet on our pass rush getting home this week. Their left tackle gave up 3 sacks last week, I believe. I think they were pressured, 13 times the Chargers were, and they gave up 5 sacks as a team. So our edge guys have got to play big both in the run game and the pass game. We got to keep edges. We've got to keep this guy in the pocket. So the up front guys have to play lights out this week in order for us to get a victory.
Kyle?
Yeah, I see a pathway to victory, but I think things have to go right for you, and you can't shoot yourself in the foot. And they just haven't not done that to this point. So I think this is going to be a very competitive. I think it's going to be another stressful game. And I said after the week 2 game against New England, where you had a couple opportunities to win the game late, I want to see as many of those opportunities for your offense and your quarterback to see how they handle those situations. And we got 2 of those opportunities against Carolina. We delivered on one. We didn't deliver on the last one, unfortunately. So I think the Chargers are going to find a way to score 27 to 30 points. And I think Miami's going to be in the 24 to 27 ballpark. So, if it ends up being 27-26 or 27-24 Miami, like, I think that's the kind of score they can win. But for a prediction right now, I'm probably leaning into the Chargers making the right play at the end of the game, just because I want to see Miami's guys do it and play complimentary at the end of the game, because they haven't really done it with consistency just yet.
Well, I think to Z's point, I'm going to say put those tackles on skates early in the game, get pressure. You know what I'm saying? With Jalen and Chubb, get those guys in the backfield, get them in Herbert's face, even if he can avoid them and make a couple plays here and there, maybe force an early turnover or 2 like you did against Carolina, but put that Chargers team in a position where they start making mistakes, because they are penalty prone, shooting themselves in the foot. That's how I can see the Dolphins winning this game. Pressure, turnovers, and then putting them in late game situations where there's pressure and you're going, holding, false start, delay of game, on the Chargers. And I think that's a clear path for the Dolphins to victory. I think it's going to be another close game too. I think Miami's going to squeak this one out. I think Waddle has a big game. I think Achan's going to go off this week in both the passing game and the run game. And I think Miami is going to win this game, and we're going to have a fun show afterward on the Dolphin Squad Show postcast. Anything you guys want to add before we wrap it up?
Let's go get a win.
We pretty much covered it.
Right.
Go get a win. Just get tough up front and shut down that run game a little bit. Get pressure on Herbert, force turnovers, and force the Chargers into some mistakes. Thank you so much for being here. Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We're here after every game, right after the game, and then we are live on Wednesdays as well. That's noon Eastern usually. Keep checking back. Sometimes we'll vary that a little bit, but we're usually here at noon Eastern on Wednesdays, as well as, again, right after the game. The Chargers in town. It's a 1 o'clock kickoff, and we'll be here right after with your squad show. Thank you for being here on YouTube. Thank you for being here wherever you get your audio podcasts, and thank you for being here on Roku as well. On the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For Z and Kyle, I'm Grease. We'll catch you next time on your Dolphin Squad Show right here. Thank you.